Hi, I'm Heather McLean, editor at SVG Europe, and I'm here today with Going Green. I'm speaking with Julia Powell, Formula E Sustainability Director, Xavier Gavory, Pure ETCR Series Director, and Ali Russell, Extreme E Chief Marketing Officer. Okay, so let's start with the big question. Why is sustainability in motorsports so important? Ali, do you want to try that one first?
Yeah, it's amazing how much motorsport has ended up doing for society. I mean, if you look at R&D, they talk about motorsport, and one season of racing is equivalent to 10 seasons or 10 years of R&D. And if you look at traction control, you look at fuel injection, you look at even some of the safety innovations, whether it's seat belts or wing mirrors, have all come from racing. And we happen to believe, like Formula E, that it's super important to use racing to tackle some of the challenges that we have in society. So, you know, this sort of innovation in terms of looking at sustainability, but using motorsport as the conduit is absolutely ideal and absolutely perfect. And it's not that we won't find the solutions, it's the fact that we find the solutions quicker by having this platform of competition between different teams, different scientists, different engineers, all with a similar drive to accelerate that innovation in the industry. And we're super excited about it with Extreme E in mind.
Definitely. And Xavier, for you?
I fully agree with Ali, definitely. On our side, with the Pure ETCR, we have maybe something which is a little bit different, is that we're talking about touring cars. And the touring cars, by definition, promote the cars that the manufacturers sell in the streets for more than 60 years. So once again, we share all those technology aspects and pioneering aspects. But on top of this, we want to reflect and the manufacturers want to reflect and showcase the cars that they sell in their dealership. So it's something more we bring to show people that electric cars do exist. Electric car can be performant, electric cars can be fun, and what they see on track and the fight they can see on track bring emotion to the cars that they purchase in the shops.
Perfect. Yes, definitely. And Julia?
Well, of course, I totally agree with my two colleagues. I just wanted to add two more kind of like perspectives to it. The first thing is that transport globally accounts for a third of emissions in terms of carbon. So that's also why Motorsport, which is the technological laboratory, needs to really, take sustainability on board, because the outcome and the impact is huge. And the other perspective is that motorsport is one of the most popular sports globally. And that's really the vehicle, pun intended, to inspire people to live more sustainable lifestyle, because you offer a very concrete and direct solution through the adoption of electric vehicles.
Yeah, we can even say that transport is the only industry over the last 30 years that increased in terms of CO2 emissions. So now is the time to decrease the CO2 emission of transport, and automotive industry through motorsport is a good example.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And staying with you, Julia, Formula E is probably the most established electric motorsport globally. How and why did Formula E start out on this track, pun intended? And what green targets did you set in the beginning, and why? And did you achieve those, in the first few years?
Yeah, well, certainly Formula E was created to help advance electrification. That was, the mission of Formula E since the beginning was co-originated between Jean Todt, the president of FIA, and Alejandro Agag, founder. And certainly at that time, we were seeing that the trends for mobility would go massively electric. And that was already more than 10 years ago. So imagine at that time, the level of technological advancement of electric vehicles, which really needed to make a big jump. So Formula E was created to break electric vehicle barriers by pushing the technology, by changing the perceptions, and also stimulating the infrastructure development. So that was, I would say, the technical mission. Whereas on sustainability side, we've been really there to give all the substance that the purpose of the championship was when we created it. So our first set of objectives that have then been evolving, but I'll keep that for kind of like later in the discussion, was first of all to, really reduce our environmental impact. That was very important for us. And that led us to some important achievements, such as becoming the first net zero carbon championship. Second, to impact positively our local communities, because one of the peculiarities of Formula E is that we race in our cities. So we have a strong positive impact potential on the local communities. And last but not least, to work with our supply chain, because in motorsport, we have such a wide range of suppliers that we do interact with, that there are huge possibilities to elevate the game in terms of sustainability, but also making sure that everyone is very much adhering to the minimum sustainable standards of the championship.
Yeah, I've seen Formula E in Hong Kong. It's pretty cool. Very, very cool. And then Ali, over to you. Another exciting motorsport, like super exciting. Extreme E has just broadcast its second race in its very first series. When you were setting up last year, did you take into account other sustainability frameworks or initiatives? And what targets have you set yourselves, and how are you planning to achieve those?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think where I've been really helped is also coming from Formula E. We were able to understand that the biggest impact on Formula E in terms of CO2 was transportation and transporting cars and people to each of the various locations. And I think what we decided to do was to very much start from a position of how do we set up a series where we reduce our carbon outputs. What are some of the decisions that we can do up front? And so we've gone with an abbreviated calendar. So we only have 5 races per annum, and we do everything by ship. So we've bought a ship called the Saint Helena, and that ship transports, I suppose, the circus from A to B, and each of our locations discusses one of the epicenters and challenges of climate change. So we have desertification, we've got melting ice caps, we've got deforestation, we've got rising sea levels, and then we've got melting glaciers. So each of the locations has a cause, and again, we don't race in locations that are virgin forests. We race in locations that have the symptoms of climate change. So have parts of the Amazon that have been burnt down. And what we do is we actively change those locations, provide a legacy. We replant, we reforest. So that what we do is we race without trace. So we've had, I suppose, the benefit of understanding the challenges of running a motorsport series, with zero impact. And what we try to do is we of course we offset, so we're carbon neutral. And then our legacy programs that we leave behind in terms of replanting, in Senegal, we're planting over 1 million mangroves. Those legacy projects make us climate positive. So what we're doing is we're racing without a trace, and we're trying to aggregate not only ourselves but the fans and also the businesses that are in partnership with us to actually make an impact on those locations we go to. And really that's come from working through a lot of the challenges that Julia has at the moment. What we've been able to do is to start with a blank sheet of paper and actually create an architecture around a motorsport championship that reduces to begin with, and then looks at how we can be climate positive. And even if you look at the fuel source for us is hydrogen fuel cell. So we work with a company called AFC, and we use solar energy, which creates the green hydrogen. The green hydrogen then helps us to charge the cars, and the only byproduct is water, which we then use to clean the cars. And when you're looking at racing in extreme locations, these cars get pretty muddy and pretty dirty. So the whole circular situation really helps. And it's building those solutions that then we can start using the media product to talk to people in terms of how they can come up with their own sustainability solutions and how we can build. And that's why we all work together, because what we want to do is to come up with ideas that people imitate and take forward, so that all sport becomes more sustainable.
Definitely. Yeah, really, really good. And to Xavier, so Pure ETC is even newer than Extreme. So you're only just now embarking on your test year before the first season starts in 2022. So what's the idea behind Pure ETCR? How did it come about and why? And then how are you guys tackling sustainability again? And what targets have you set? How do you expect to achieve those?
It's a very vast question, definitely. But first of all, I would say that it's not only a test year. It's the very first year. We are an international series this year, and we're going to be from 2022 onwards an FIA World Cup series. But it's much more than this for us, much more than a test. And for sure, we from the very beginning, we have integrated sustainability as part of our DNA from day one, because it didn't make sense to do electric racing and pretend we have a zero emission race without doing anything else. So how the Pure ETCR has been created, once again, it's a wheel, and it's the purpose of the Pure ETCR of the touring car category, sorry, to promote the cars sold by the dealers and sold by the manufacturers. So there were a real intention from manufacturers to say, hey guys, we're promoting touring cars and normal aspirated engines or normal petrol or diesel engines. Now we want to do the same with our range of product, our electric range of product. And so this is how things have been created. And that's quite a long journey, especially in the context of the COVID and the global crisis, but now it's happening. So in terms of sustainability, we obviously again decided and wanted to make something from the very beginning that led us as well to change our perception and our way of doing as a promoter on all our other series in motorcycling, for the WTCR, and now for the UCI Track Cycling League. We have decided to shift completely our way of doing things, very humbly, because it takes a lot of time, obviously, but the Pure ETCR had a big impact on us as a company and probably on us as individuals as well. So we take, that's funny because between Julia and Ali, there's a lot of things we have in common, definitely. So we first decided to have a zero emission race, but not only from the cars themselves, but the way they are recharged. So we have hydrogen generators as well, with a green hydrogen sourced to make sure that there's no emission at all. Then we select our circuits and the places we're going to for their approach in terms of sustainability. And we go to Copenhagen, for example, which is probably the leading city in the world in terms of sustainability and the zero carbon target. We go to Vallelunga in Italy, which is a circuit that produces 120% of its electricity with solar panels. So they give and they provide the community around the circuit with the additional electricity provided. We do the same in Aragon, which is a very advanced region in Spain on this purpose. So basically, we select a calendar, we put a calendar together, which is relevant in terms of venue, but also relevant in terms of transport. So we make only sea freight. We committed not to make any air freight because air freight has an impact in terms of transport, which is 100 times higher than sea freight in terms of for the same volume and weight transported. Then we work together with Goodyear to have only one tire to avoid transporting wet tires and dry tires. We have a chart, an environmental chart as well, and commitment with all our stakeholders, all our partners, providers, to go in the way that, you know, it's a common effort. We cannot do it by ourselves, and it's the same for Formula E and for Extreme E. They cannot, and we cannot be alone in this, and we need all our stakeholders, all our partners to be behind us, pushing hard in the same direction. And that's incredible, all the initiatives that have been made and which are starting now with people willing to do better, greener motorsport, a better motorsport with a more sustainable approach. So we work together as well with an NGO named Earth Day that helps us on our best practices. We have signed the chart of the United Nations for sports. We are working with the FIA as well as a promoter to get accreditation. So Formula E was the real leader on this, showing the way to some others. So we are the third promoter being accredited by the FIA with a 3-star accreditation for all the actions we put together in the question of sustainability. So a lot of things to do, a lot of things already done humbly. And the very last thing I would like to say, that was Julia's remark about the perception. Perception is key. And you know, we at Eurosport events, as a promoter, we belong to Discovery, and the very first task of Discovery back in the 80s was to promote, and not to promote, but to educate people. It was an educational channel. So it's completely part of the DNA of the group and of Eurosport as well, and Eurosport events. So we want to shift people's perception about electromobility. We want to encourage people to purchase electric vehicles, and then globally reduce the emissions of CO2 and get a better impact on the environment.
Yeah, it's a group effort, definitely. I like the way you're involving the whole supply chain as well. And Julia, over to you again. Given that there's a lot of new green motorsports coming to the fore now, how is that reflected on Formula E sustainability targets over the years? And where are those goals today? You know, have these other motorsports coming through kind of helped push you or shape you, you know, to move in a certain direction?
It's certainly important that the rest of the motorsport community is getting more sustainable. So some of the established series, for example, WRC, has done a lot over the last few years to really kind of like improve their sustainability credentials, or to see some new series like Extreme E or ETRC that are coming with sustainability much more at the core of what they do. Certainly for us, I mean, having been the first one very much kind of like created with sustainability at the core of the championship, it's probably kind of like a stimulation to keep going. And certainly our sustainability agenda is still very much to be leading forward and pioneering in the motorsport and sports industry. And that's very much, I mean, the ethos of Formula E since the beginning. So we keep, I mean, delivering and trying to also test and innovate. So leadership and innovation is a big part of what we do. Again, as I've said, becoming the first motorsport to achieve net zero carbon was an important step. But obviously, this is what you see. The background was having measured and monitored reduce our emission for 6 years before achieving these. And then there are some new projects that are coming in the pipeline. I can't reveal yet. In the coming months, there will be an important announcement that keeps us going. And again, that's a very positive stimulation and emulation between those sports, because again, what is very important in motorsport is that you need to look at it as a pyramid. And there's basically kind of like a space for all the different categories. There's single seater at the top, and then you will have the different type of championships that do come and make the whole rest of the pyramid.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah.
I think it's fair to say, Heather, as well, as if you look at you know, the share of the industry that electric vehicles have, you know, it's single figures. It's 2-3% of cars that are purchased. So there's a long way to go in terms of developing cars that have autonomy, that have performance, that have street cred and sexiness. And I think all three of us are, you know, a platform in our own ways for accelerating the adoption of electric vehicles. Mm-hmm. And if you look at that utopia, it's when we've got people purchasing electric vehicles and moving forward, and that's what success looks like, is doubling that year on year, tripling that, you know, getting that acceleration. And there's obviously a lot of space for this, and you know, what we want to do is obviously you know, focus on transportation, but what we also want is we want the whole sport industry to look at how it conducts sport and how we can minimize footprints and carbon footprints for all sporting events. And you know, it's not about being in competition with each other. There's more than enough space. It's about how do we do that and how do we share best practice. And I think that's the opportunity to have, you know, summits like this is to help people to explore, because there's no single idea here. What you've got 3 businesses here that are developing our own propositions, but it doesn't mean that we don't speak to each other, get ideas from each other, and it just helps to, you know, be a focal point for the industry to look at how it accelerates itself.
Definitely. And let's stay with you, Ali. You're working on sustainable motorsport, but how do you follow that through into your broadcast production? Because obviously that is also another big CO2 producer, normally flying around the world, etc. What are you doing there, and what technical partners are you working with to enable that?
Yeah, that's a great question, and we work with Albert, and it's a specific accreditation for the broadcast industry. And what we try to do is we have the same perspective in terms of reduce where possible. So we go with remote production. So what that means is, yes, we've got cameramen on the ground, but what we've done is we've done away with the sort of centralized hub system that's on site in terms of production. We've put that back in London. So we've probably, we have around about 30% of the staff that you would usually have on an outside broadcast. And then we have remote production in two other locations. So we have the studio in London. We have NEP, who are our technical partners that provide our augmented reality and virtual reality. And they are based in the Netherlands. And we have Alcamel, who are based in Barcelona, that looks after all the timing procedures. And that's all together with the live shots from site in these extreme environments, and overlaid and put out as a live TV proposition. So we've got a long way to go, but we were looking at something that was pretty unique before COVID. These remote productions, because of COVID, have been accelerated a huge amount. And as I say, we can go further, but at the moment it's working incredibly well, and we're able to put together a fantastic broadcast product with a fraction of the CO2 emissions that we would have had if we would approached it in a traditional sense.
It's great footage, amazing stuff, really thrilling. And the same question to you, Xavier. How are you working on your broadcast production on this?
We are a little bit more traditional, I would say, because we go in places which are mainly in Europe for this year, so we don't have the same constraint going everywhere in the world. But for sure, as Ali said, the COVID accelerated the way people can work remotely. So we are not today, we do not have our live producer based in France or UK and even taking place in Italy. That's not the case. We still bring people on site, but it's true that for our social media and some of the job are done remotely, not the entire production. Then we sourced AMP Visual as the producer, as the company that put together the TV production means for the event, and we selected them for several reasons. One of the reasons is, of course, because they are probably one of the best in the world for this kind of very technical and very specific and complicated production. You will see that we brought a lot of new things on site, that we want to be very innovative on the way we film touring car and the way we film circuit racing, to make sure that the pure ETCR does not look like the WTCR. So we have a different sporting format. We have a different approach in terms of editorial, in terms of storytelling, in terms of nearly everything. But one of the other reasons why we selected AMP Visual as well is because they have an approach, a sustainable approach, and they have a vision for this. So that helped a lot, obviously, and it's the case once again for most of our providers, and from the catering and hospitality to the setup of the branding on site. It's something that we must do, and we once again, as I've said before, we all need to go in the same direction. So remote production, not for today, but we use very the latest TV products and TV means, which are much more greener than they were in the past, and we will see in the future how the series evolve and how we can potentially remote things as much as we can. This will come one day for sure. That's the future.
It is definitely. It's what everyone's saying after the last sort of 18 months. For all of you, how do you intend to evolve your green approach to your individual series or to your broadcasts? Julia, do you want to start that one?
Yes, well, I think it's very clear that our sustainability credentials are just going to remain. They are so central to what we do. It's simply going to be kind of like a natural evolution to what we do and what we deliver in the series. a specific example on the broadcast, we've done, a partnership just this year, started in 2020 with BBC. BBC is, doing a special series on, sustainability related innovations and so on. And they've chosen Formula E to illustrate at each event the key sustainable solutions, and not only at the track, but also what surrounds in the local communities and so on. So that's certainly one of the new ideas that we've implemented just recently, again, because ultimately the point is to really pass the message on to our audiences and really ultimately make sure that they will convert to more sustainable lifestyles.
Great, thanks. And Ali, how are you going to evolve your sustainable approach?
Well, I think we're a media platform, and what we want to do is we want to get more than just us. Of course, we want to be net zero and actually climate positive as we move forward, but we're a fraction of the global CO2 emissions. And what we need to do is we need to accelerate the impact. So we talk about impact a huge amount, and that's how do we get the fans to change their ways of life. And it can be in a very small way, or it can be in a huge way. So we work with the UN on a program called Count Us In, where it can be anything from buying an electric car to moving to a plant-based diet to walking more. And it's really that aggregation of people, of businesses, of governments that really accelerates that sort of change. And Extreme E isn't going to solve the challenges of climate change alone. So it's how do we get with like-minded people? How do we accelerate that change? And really our partners, all of our partners have stories to tell. So we work with a company called Pallé that have come up with recyclable packaging, which isn't new, but this is biodegradable recycled packaging. So what it means that if you don't recycle it, it recycles itself in a year's time. We work with Continental on the tire front, and they're looking at different substrates for tires, and they're looking at using dandelions as a substrate, and they actually use that in bike tires at the moment, and they're looking to use that in car tires. And dandelions are essentially weeds, and they grow in far more places than rubber grows, and are far more environmentally friendly, and actually far better, from an economical point of view as well. So we try to tell stories, and those stories, are to the betterment. And we try to be that focal point to allow maybe some of these startup businesses that maybe don't have the sort of marketing budgets that some of the big multinationals have. We try to help them to tell their story, to meet other businesses and sources of finances, to be able to create this epicenter which accelerates sustainable business in a really clear and collaborative way.
Awesome, love that. Love the dandelion tires. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's I have to say it's pretty special, and it's at the front end, so you can't buy them today. But what we want to be is part of that R&D of testing them in the most extreme environments in terms of sub-zero temperatures, heat, a variety of different surfaces, and also the performance aspect, because they're being driven by the likes of Lewis Hamilton, the likes of Nico Rosberg, Sebastian Loeb, Carlos Sainz. The type of athletes we've got are the very, very top athletes in the motorsport industry. And so what it allows us to do is to really be that sort of epicenter to develop. So yeah, thank you.
Great. And to you, Xavier.
A very vast question again, definitely. But we, first of all, there's one thing which gonna change in the future. The technology itself is changing very fast. So where we are today and where we will be in 5 years' time will probably be different, or will probably be more advanced in terms of technology and so on. When you see that today some laboratories manage to create lithium based on seawater, I mean, it proves that things will change drastically within the next coming years, which is good because we're living a revolution. So when we live a revolution, sometimes there's some things which are not done the right way, the exact right way, but that will change in the future. So this is very important. See how the evolution, how the technology will evolve within the next 10 years. Then we pedagogy and education, again, is something very important, and we're going to insist on as much as we can. We did a very nice series on broadcasts on Eurosport together with Hyundai to promote electromobility, to promote their range of products. With Mr. Picard, with the Prince Albert, we try to influence people as much as we can and give the real image of electromobility. And that's something very important, a real pillar. Then with earthday.org, we're going to try to make some actions for the Earth Day itself, which is the 22nd of April, but actions all year long as well. So we work on the canopy project to plant trees. We work on local actions everywhere in all the countries we go, try to involve the local community and put things together in a nice way, and not only stop ourselves stop ourselves to sustainability, but also to integration, we just lost Julia, to involve the local communities, and that's something great. If we can do things together, it's something great. Then measure our carbon emission is key as well. This is the very first year, so we will start measuring our carbon emission to know how to analyze and see how we can reduce it in the future, and see exactly what we have to target and how we need to do things. This is the reason why as well we're gonna target an ISO certification very, very soon, and hopefully for the beginning of the second season in 2022, to know exactly what we have to stick to and what is the right way. And then I think, that's it. That's the way we're gonna. It's a lot. And Julia knows what I'm talking about, because she's the expert at Formula E dedicated to this. So we have created a department as well to work on all those topics. We are very small today, but with a huge will.
So where there's a will, there's a way. That's what they say, isn't
Absolutely.
it? And last question for all of you. Start with Julia. What do you think of? Do you think the general world of motorsports, even those that haven't put sustainability at their core, could or should be doing more to go greener without just ticking boxes and greenwashing?
Absolutely. I think, we need to keep in mind the challenges we have ahead of us. And by 2030, United Nations wants the world to basically cut out 50% of the global emissions. So it's massive. And we have only 9 years to go. It's really, and I very much agree with what Xavier was saying. It's only technology that will enable us to get there. So we need to keep, working, developing, and all companies should have a bare minimum level, what's the technical expert called CSR, corporate social responsibility, to do the right thing. And then you have you have two ways of approaching. Sustainability can be strategic at the heart of what we do, and obviously you have 3 companies that have taken sustainability really at the core. Or other companies, as I was saying, or the Motorsport or the Sport Series, that should do at least the bare minimum that sport should do to make sure that they have a minimal impact on society. And just to give some concrete examples, I think it's always super important. Again, I'm a sustainability expert. I've done all my career in motorsport. I think it's very important to be authentic and to have substance to what you say. So, you need to make sure that your company is doing the right thing before claiming anything. And again, you would have, we focus a lot about emissions. You would have a lot of companies that come out with, announcement on plastics and so on. Whereas internally, in terms of what they do purely to cut out the plastic use, it's not really authentic. It's not done properly and so on. For example, it's very hard to point out someone, but what we've done is that in 2 seasons we managed to cut down single-use plastic by 300,000 plastic bottles at Formula E, thanks to a partner, Allianz, that decided to really embark with us on that journey and sponsor hydration stations that not only are free water for the public, but also reusable water pouches that can be used as memorabilia. That's very concrete, that's very tangible. That was a commitment from us. If you come to our HQ, there's no plastic bottles since many, many years, and that was a normal continuation. And that's very important to have that authentic approach.
Definitely. Ali?
Yeah, I think you know, it's about a portfolio approach, and what we've got here is we've got 3 series that are devoted and passionate about electrification and technology around electrification, and it's chicken and egg. You know, electrification requires renewable technologies to accelerate. So, you know, we're not the solution. It's not a silver bullet in terms of having success. It's about how do we collaborate within industry, and I think all of us in our own ways, we're all, I think, focused on our own emissions, which I think is the responsible way to do things. But I think most businesses are waking up to that, and certainly I found over the last year. And like Julia, I've been involved in sustainable motorsports for over 10 years now. I think what we're seeing is we weren't prepared for a global pandemic, and we're seeing the output of that and the impact of that on everyone's lives. And I think there's now a genuine desire to get ready to tackle some of the climate change issues in a coordinated manner. And I think COP26 later in Glasgow this year will be the epicenter for the fight and where that fight will be. And that fight's going to involve everyone. And I think, you know, for me, I think most motorsports are aware of the need to be more sustainable. And I think most of them are actually, you know, moving in that direction, which is very different to 10 years ago when we were the first talking about electric motorsport, and people were, you know, maybe laughing at us because they never thought it would happen. Now there's a realization that it's here and it's now, and it's the epicenter, and it is the future. It's now in terms of how, you know, what is the right way forward? Is it lithium ion? Is it hydrogen fuel cell? What technologies are going to be the next technology? And as Xavier says, you know, there will be future technologies that come into this, and it's about, you know, motorsport being true to being an innovator and an accelerator, and it has a role to play in the world. And most sports have a role to play in terms of, you know, teamwork, excellence, performance. But what motorsport has is that opportunity to really accelerate and lead the world and lead the way that we live. And, you know, we're talking about transportation here, but the technologies that we're using can be used in ships, and they can be used in aircraft in the future. So if we find solutions that make the batteries lighter, we make the energy density much better, make the performance of the drivetrains better, then there's no doubt in my mind that the technology will move out of cars, buses, bikes, and into planes, helicopters, and ships themselves. And that gets really exciting because we're all then having an authentic impact on the planet in a really, really positive way. And the clock is ticking. So we need to accelerate in terms of that change and that desire to change.
Absolutely. And last but not least, same question to you, Xavier.
Yeah, I believe that definitely the pandemic get an acceleration on the consciousness of the people, of the audience in general, and that probably, yeah, the pandemic was extremely bad, of course, definitely, but it was a kind of a game changer in a way, making people feeling and living slightly differently and get a different approach. And I would say that today it's more and more difficult to fake. You were talking about greenwashing, and this is something we absolutely don't want to hear about, because we want to do things once again humbly, and even if we can potentially make mistakes, but we are learning, and we want to do things on an authentic way, and it's more difficult to probably for some companies to fake and make greenwashing, because first there are more and more control, and because the public will never accept anymore greenwashing done on purpose and wrong communication about things which are not true or not done for a purpose. So it's something very important, and I think that it's on a very positive way. There's more and more tools, there's more and more, the technology adapted itself, there's more and more things easier to do than it was 5-10 years ago. To have a sustainability approach 10 years ago was super complicated because the world was not prepared for that. But now, with the acceleration of the pandemic and all the initiatives made in all the industries and in all fields of in life in general, every day it's easier to access true purposes, true actions, and true things made for sustainability. So this is very important. And once again, we cannot lie. The more difficult is to deliver, of course, and this is the reason why as well we have a ISO certification. The FIA is working hard with their promoter to control things which are done, because it's easy to, once again, to not easy, but you can have accreditation, but then you have to deliver, and you have to deliver what you promised, and that's the most challenging thing. So a lot of excitement, because we feel that the world is changing on a positive way, and a huge challenge for all of us to deliver concrete things, authentic things, and do things the right way, or the brave way, maybe.
The brave way. Great way to finish. Okay, thank you very much, everybody.